Hello, this is Malorian. This is the Orc Tactical Team, and already it seems just a little while ago we were covering the Warriors of Chaos book, and now today we're going to be covering the Daemons of Chaos book. Very close to when the last release was. Rumor I heard was that the last book was actually delayed. It was supposed to come out when the Skull Crushers came out, but for whatever reason it got delayed, and either way, who cares? Lots of updates means happy Malorian. So yeah, Demons of Chaos, I'm having some orange pop and root beer schnapps to go along with the chaosness, so yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, this book, for those who are kind of wondering like which way is it going to go, is, you know, when we had Demons come out with the last edition, it was insane. They were very powerful, very strong book, and really took a lot of people out of the game. And so they're wondering, with this one here being made, what's going to be the big changes? Is it going to be overpowered again? Is it going to be just stupid? What's going to happen? And you know, it's a pretty big difference. I mean, you see all the old units they had there before, but they definitely are taking Demons in a different direction. Really trying to touch on some things that they used to have years ago in the book, and of course there's all the new units that they came out with in here as well, plus a few more as well. So let's just start from the very beginning, which is basically the army rules. And probably the very first thing you have to touch on here is they're already making it very important for the different lores, or the different gods, to be sticking together with their own. I mean, it's the whole thing where if you have a Herald of Khorne, he has to go into a unit that has basically the mark of Khorne. I mean, they call it, you know, Demons of Khorne and Demons of Nurgle, blah blah. It's actually special rules that are on them that force them to go in the unit. And the nice thing is that, I mean, we're going to be touching on the special characters later, but they actually make sure now that things like, you know, Skull Taker and all that stuff, he actually is a Demon of Khorne and all this stuff. So no silly things as before. But yeah, so really making sure, of course, that they're staying together that way. Another thing is that your General and your BSB only affect units of the same type. So if you go and you make your General a Bloodthirster, well, he's only going to give his leadership to other Demons of Khorne. So a very interesting way of not forcing you to take a certain god, but definitely directing you along the way, saying, well, if you do this, you'll have this advantage. And so for sure, I think that for the most part, you're not going to be seeing people taking a whole bunch of different gods. You're going to be seeing a lot more where this is my Khorne army, this is my Nurgle army, this is whatever. Now, the next thing past that is actually getting into kind of the marks. And what that is that whatever type of demon they are, they get these bonuses. It's kind of like the marks from Warriors of Chaos, but of course, they're not marked. They actually are the demons of them. So the first one here, well, I guess touching on them all, they all get hatred. But it's hatred against their enemy god. So again, that's touching back before where, you know, all the gods aren't friends. The gods are fighting with each other all the time. So that's really shown here where, you know, if you are a Demon of Khorne, if you're up against anything that's Demons of Slaanesh, you have hatred against them. And like I said, it's like that for all the other demons. So interesting little characterful thing. They'll come in now and then whenever you're up against other demon armies and have that other stuff. The next thing here, of course, let's touch on Khorne. Now, Khorne, what they get on top of that is whenever you charge, you get +1 strength. And this, to me, is kind of, it sounds really nice until we start talking to things like the Bloodletters where their strength actually went down. And so I know as an Orc player, from 40k and in fantasy, that me needing to get the charge, to get the +1 strength, really kind of sucks. It's really nice when it was just the first round of combat or whatever. So this will definitely help a lot more on fast units, or if you're going to actually now as a demon player set up a lot more things, we're kind of baiting and redirecting to ensure you're getting the charge and getting that +1 strength, because of course it's going to help you quite a bit. For Tzinch, what you see there is kind of like in the Warriors of Chaos book, where any wards of a 1 you get to reroll. So it's kind of a way of improving their ward save just a little bit. Because it's only a 5+, it really doesn't really increase it at tons. It really doesn't, when you do the math, it isn't really like a 4+. It's a little bit less, but you know, it's a nice little benefit. And as well, the nice thing too is that if you are a caster and you roll a 1 for channeling, you get to re-roll that as well. So that's, you know, a nice little extra bonus there. For Nurgle, this is nice. Nurgle is just like Warriors of Chaos, where it's a -1 straight up to hit. And of course, you know, that's very solid. We already touched on this with the Warriors of Chaos book, that is, you know, so much better than it was with the -1 weapon skill. This helps so much. And then finally Slaanesh, where you just get armor piercing, which is, you know, with all the armor we're seeing out there now, can be a fairly big deal. Now, the next thing to touch on here is probably more where, I mean, of course there's all the rules here before, where they're immune to psych, they have magical attacks, they have a 5+ ward normally, but probably the next thing to talk about here is that their instability. Now, their demonic instability is kind of like before, where you take your test, see what the difference is, you lose those guys, same as always, right? However, they've added in a little bit more now, where it really makes a big deal if you roll double 1s or double 6s. If you ever roll double 1s, any wounds or models you lost during that combat come back. So let's say you have your big unit of Bloodletters or fighting a big unit of Savage Orc Biggins. Of course you're going to lose like half unit on either side. Let's say the Savages win, Demons roll double 1s, boom, they're a full horde again. Of course, this is a thing where it's only going to happen 1 in every 36 times, and even less than that when you take into account that's only when they lose combat. So really, for the most part, I mean, this will be just kind of like a oh wow type thing, but I mean, it is there. The one that's kind of can really suck though is if you get double 6s, it's just dead. Just take them off the board. And really, just to kind of let you guys know, this isn't something that's really new. Before the last book, so 2 books ago, that's how it kind of went. You did your leadership test, and if you rolled your thing or under your leadership input, that was still, if you rolled your base leadership at least, then you just lose models, but if you failed your leadership completely unmodified, you just popped. And so it's not that bad, you know, it's only if you roll double 6. So again, this is only going to happen if you lose combat, and all those times, only 1 in 36 times. So very rare, but just something there where it can really swing a game where, you know, maybe you lose combat because of static res or a musician with your greater demon. Double 6, gone. So something that can definitely be pretty crazy. Now, something I know has been getting a lot of negative feedback on the forums on this new book is the new Reign of Chaos rules. Now, what this is here is that basically you roll your magic dice like normal for your wins of magic. After you've done that, not only is that the dice you have, but you confer that to this table here, and it's for every single result from 3 to 12, something crazy can happen. Now, of course, it's things like going to 7, the most often one, nothing's going to happen. A lot of the other stuff is actually bad for the demon player. The 2 1s on either side of 7 are negatives against a certain god. So if you have Nurgle, all your Nurgle units, friend or foe, are going to get hurt. So I guess it can help you if you're up against a Nurgle army and you roll this. But again, the way I kind of see this is that, again, it's trying to encourage you to take all of one god, because if you go and kind of spread things out, it really is just going to kind of say that every turn you're going to be taking a blast, whereas if you kind of go more on one god, then you should be safe. You know, of course there's always the one time that you roll that result and you really get slammed, but at the same time it's not like, well, every turn one unit's going to get screwed over. Other stuff where, like, if you roll a double 1 type thing, then all the units have to take an instability test. So it's like every unit on the table just lost combat. So that again can really damage you. But you have good stuff as well, where if you roll a double 12, then all of a sudden you just get a new unit of demons. They just pop up and you get a new unit. So I mean, of course, this stuff is going to be more infrequent. Remember, you're going to be rolling this here 12 times during the game. So this is 12 different results. And so when you look at that, even though you have only a 1 in 36 chance of, say, getting that 12, well, because you're doing 12 times each game, it actually makes it a lot more probable that any of these extremes are going to happen. And I mean, really, to be fair, if you have your general and stuff there, doing an instability test on all your units isn't so bad. The double 6 thing where you get an extra unit will be really nice. The real negative that I see from this, though, is just the time it takes. I mean, some of it could be easy, right? Like I roll a double 7, nothing happens. Well, okay, I roll a 7, nothing happens. Or if I roll something that's negative against Slaanesh, well, there's no Slaanesh. All right, we skip it. But the fact of the matter is that you're going to need to go, and every single turn, slow down the game and go and check. And if you need to resolve something, resolve it. And so what that really means is that over the course of a game, let's say that you're increasing your game somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes. And in a game where you're trying to, get in there and kill stuff, it could really mean that maybe now that I'm not going to be able to finish the game on time, or even just the fact that you have to realize this could actually be reducing your sportsmanship. I mean, just to be completely honest, if I'm playing against a person and every single turn, I mean, it's not like the game is fast-paced and going back and forth. Every single magic phase we go, slow down, check your book, see what happens. It's not like I really have anything against you or your army. It's just the fact that I'm having less fun in the game because instead of being engrossed, I have to kind of stop and wait, see what happens with your crazy rules. So, a neat little kind of like characterful thing they have in there, but in its applications to tournaments, it could just be plainly annoying. I don't think it's going to be banned like some people are talking about, but it's something you definitely have to think of. Just like if you're going to a tournament as a Skaven player with lots of different units, you have to realize the time restraints and what it means to your opponent. Now we can start getting into kind of more of the units and what they are, and I'll just kind of jump right here. And again, just like I did with the Warriors of Chaos, I'm going to do a general book overview now, and then later on in the next one, I'll go back and touch on the special characters, which some of them are kind of interesting. The mask in general, just as a little tidbit there, is going to be interesting. But okay, of course you have all your greater demons again. Your Bloodthirster, your Lord of Change, your Great Unclean One, your Keeper of Secrets. There are a lot of points. But the big thing here that's kind of crazy with them is the way to give them upgrades. Before, you just got your allotment and you said, okay, I want this and this and this and this. I want to have my Keeper of Secrets to always have the ability where I gain back wounds whenever I cause them. Well, what happens now is that you get 100 points to take of gifts, right? Seems pretty easy. The problem is that gifts are completely random. So by that, there's 3 different types of gifts. There's lesser gifts, which are 25 points, greater ones, which are 50, and then 75, which are, exalted ones, which are 75. So from those, you have to kind of like divvy up your points if you even want to use it all, and then you roll on this chart and see what you get randomly. And then the only nice thing is that there is the 0 option, and of these are things where there's another page of kind of artifacts you can get, and these will let you then take those instead. But they're fairly limited. For the 25-point ones, there's really just 1 for each god. For the 50-point things, 1 for each god. And for the 75, you get these 3 kind of crazy Hellforged artifacts, which we'll kind of touch on in a little second here. But the big thing here is like you can't really go into a game saying, this is what my Demon Prince is going to do, this is what he's designed for. When you go into a game, you're going to have to just roll the dice and see what happens. Especially if you're going for some of these greater ones, which can be very powerful. Like things where every single time where you're trying to spell, you roll an extra dice. So it's kind of like the reverse of a Slan with Rumination, and can be very powerful. Something that you might want to notice here with this way that works with the gifts is that you can't get a scroll. There's no way that you actually get items from the common items in the main rulebook, so you're not going to get a spell scroll either way you do this. So kind of a scary thing as a demon player. While we're there, the magic, exactly the same as Warriors of Chaos. Exactly the same. So just to quickly go back, because this is pretty fast, like I said with the Warriors of Chaos, you got your Lore to Tzeentch, which is, it's whatever, and of course giving your whole regen to your enemy isn't a good thing. Lore Nurgle, which is amazing because of how it buffs toughness or takes away toughness, and then all the other spells are based around toughness, and then the whole signature or part of it, the Lore attribute, gives you back wounds. It's amazing. And then the whole thing where the Lore Slaanesh is situational, has some really toolbox things in it. But jumping back here, like I said, if you're just to take one 75-point item, it's completely random. Roll your dice, you never know what it's going to be. At least if it's something that sucks, then you can say, okay, I'm going to go back to the 0 and pick that item. Now, what you could do, though, is just go and say, you know what, I'm going to take 4 lesser gifts. And this is just like rolling a level 4 on the Winds of Magic, where if you're a level 1 trying to roll for a spell, trying to get, you know, the number 6 spell, Foot of Gork or whatever, you only have that 1 in 6 chance and it's really random. But when you have 4 dice, and I mean with doubles here you don't pick, you re-roll, but with that way that system works, you have a better chance of getting the ones overall that you like, because you have a real spread. And so if you just think of it this way, of a Bloodthirster that's going to have, let's see, you're going to have, like, you know, impact hits. You're going to have basically the Charm Shield, because you have a 2+ ward against the first wound you suffer. Not hit, wound. So it's even better than the Charm Shield. You're going to have a breath weapon. You're going to have always strikes first, right? A lot of cool stuff, right? So I think that's, if you're going to be doing a Greater Demon, unless you have a plan for one of those other items, boom, I'm just going to do 4 of the lesser gifts and just try and take that whole spread. And then if I don't get something I like, then I'll just go for the weapons. Now, when we get to actually what these weapons are, like I said, each one basically has effectively a 25-point item and a 50-point item for each of the main gods. Now, on here we have our Blade of Blood. This will give you +1 strength and killing blows. So again, putting on a Bloodthirster, it's solid, right? +1 strength. He's already normally going to be getting another +1 strength when you charge in. This guy's going to be a monster, even to other monsters or to high armor. So pretty cool there. Not too bad. Then you have the Axicorn. This one's more expensive. It gives you +3 attacks if you're in base contact with at least 3 other models. So of course this will be your infantry killer. So if you have, again, if you have to kind of be saying that this is going to be a guy that's going to be not going after the big tough things, it's going after infantry. I just want to be a killing machine. So it's okay, 50 points is a lot, but for +3 attacks, as long as you can make that happen, and it doesn't turn out that, you know, you put this on your Herald or whatever and you're up against ogres, so it's not even possible, you know what, it can be alright. There's this Wand of Whimsy, and or Whimsy, and what this does here is that every single time that you cast or dispel a spell, you roll a d6, and if on a 5+, you're going to get an extra strength and attack for each of those charges there. So that's something where, you know, it can be okay. Of course this has to be on a caster, so it's probably going to be on a Greater Demon, either Nurgle, Slanesh, or Tzinch, and so that as you're casting these things, these guys are already combat monsters, are going to be getting even better. One of the things with all this randomness is that Heralds are a lot more susceptible to die than before, so I don't know if I'd really be doing this with them. You got your Staff of Change, and this one's also kind of cool. What this does is that every single time that against a character you basically go and kill them, then after that they can explode, and d6 models around can take a strength 5 hit. So again, it has to be a character or a monster, which is again situational, but could be good. Overall, I don't think it's worth trying to take that risk. You have a Plague Flail. This one's going to be +2 strength. It's a flail. And then the big thing here is if you have to take a wound, pass a toughness test, or else take another wound. You know, if you're doing your stuff with the synergy with the Lord Nurgle, where you're dropping down their toughness, this could be okay. But overall, I just like to kill stuff outright anyway and not play with this stuff. You got your good old Bale Sword there again, where you have poison attacks. It does D3 wounds, so can be okay if you're going to put that in your Greater Demon and Nurgle or whatever. You have your Wit Stealer Sword, and what this does here is a whole thing where if you do a wound, then all of a sudden they have to pass initiative or take another wound as well. The Mask, I'll just throw in here, reduces your initiative by 1, so this could kind of help there and make it like a double wound type thing. But again, it's going to be situational, because it's only going to help you whenever you're fighting a multi-wound model that you didn't just kill outright, that then you maybe sneak that last one in. So maybe in 50 games it's going to kill off that character that wouldn't have died otherwise. But yeah, so again, I'm not too keen on that one. Lash of Despair, it's kind of just this The strength is of the user. It's a range 12. You get 2d6 shots, which kind of sounds pretty cool, but for the most part, you know, it's not going to probably kill too many stuff. I mean, it could be alright. I mean, if you're going around using this against the monsters and stuff on your greater demon and whipping them and killing them and all that, if you didn't want to dedicate yourself to combat, run around and start taking off all their wounds, I can kind of see that. But of course, against anything that's rank and file, you're better off just getting in there, making sure you're not being shot and starting to, you know, stomp and all that stuff. Now we get into the Hellforge artifacts, and so all these are effectively 75 points the way that this book works. And they all have really crazy names, and some of them are hard to say. But for this first one here, it's kind of like the Tomb King item where it lets you bring another unit in from reserve, basically. So what you do is you pick one unit that's going to be reserve. It could be whatever you want. It doesn't have to be core. And what you do is at some point you go and you put down this portal somewhere within 12 inches and it's going to scatter. And you then correct it to make sure it's actually on the board and possible. Then in the next remaining phase, that unit gets to come in from there as if it just came in, you know, from a charge or whatever. So it can't charge, it can't march, but it can come on. If you ever die, it just kind of like shoots out and then just really scatters. But for the most part, you could make this work. I mean, if let's say you're in a situation where you're going to be going into a real grind, so you have to go into the front, fight, but what you really got to do is get to that line in the back, get to that bunker. And so if you were, say against Skaven or something, you could charge into the front, do that behind, do your combat, then it's their turn. Your next turn they come on, then it's their side, and then on your side they could charge. So even then, with that best case situation, it's a real far ways down the road that you actually get to do anything. So maybe you do this with, say, like a unit of flamers, or we're going to be getting on to all these other units that have actually like flamer templates that could do a lot of damage. So at least that, when they come on the board, they can be doing that. But as far as combat-wise, it's going to be too late by the time it actually comes around. Next one you have here is this rock that you can use, enchanted item for what it works. And what this does here is at the end of any movement phase, you get to place down this cursed bulwark. Think of the blessed bulwark, but this one's cursed. After this, you roll a dice, right, on the end of each of your turns. On a 1 to 3, nothing happens. On a 4 to 5, you add another bulwark to touch that. And on a 6, you add a tower. So it's kind of a way of making your own terrain if you need it. So let's say you're doing some sort of defensive army that's going to be dealing with a lot of ranged or whatever. This could be a good way of making sure you're of your own terrain. Of course, if you're bringing down buildings, you can do movement shenanigans and all this. So I would see you might be using this if you're doing a Tzeentch army. You know, a lot of shooting, long range stuff. And then because you guys kind of suck, you're going to want to have things to help protect you and have buildings where like, oh, you're about to charge me? No, you won't, because there's a building right in front of you. So that can be kind of fun. There's actually a weapon in here. And the way it works, where if you already have kind of a weapon already and you get one of these, all it is at the start of combat, you pick which one you're going to use. But this one here, called the Eternal Blade, you roll a D3 at the start of the game, or sorry, each round of combat, and that's what it adds to your weapon skill, strength, initiative, and attacks. And that's pretty solid. I mean, average is 2, and if you're adding 2 weapon skill to all these things you already have, pretty good weapon skill. I mean, all of a sudden you're in the upper tiers there, playing 2 to your strength. Initiative is whatever. Could help if you have always strikes first, of course. And of course, attacks is always awesome. So for the point cost, this will probably be worth it, and it's something that's kind of interesting. Last one here is this one tome, where what that does is lets you re-roll the Winds of Magic. However, if you do that, then your opponent gets to do that as well on their turn. But for the most part, what that's going to mean for you is, let's say you went for that all Nurgle army, right? And then you get the result on the Winds of Magic that every unit of Nurgle gets blasted. Well, okay, let's use this and get a reroll. I don't care that you're going to reroll on your turn. This is devastating to me. I have to make sure it doesn't happen. So I'd be very tempted, if you're going to be going for one of the themed armies, to be looking at this. But then again, it's a lot of points, and it's going to really take up your entire thing, and it has to go on one of your big guys, because it's a big chunk. So it's a good thing if you're going to go with theme, but just know that your greater demon won't be as awesome as you could be kitted out with the other stuff. So that's really your lords, except for the demon prince. These guys have a demon prince too, and it's not really as crazy as the Warriors of Chaos one. It's not unbreakable. It is actually a large target, where the other one is not a large target. It can get all the marks, so I mean, you can still get Nurgle, you can still make him a wizard, you can give him chaos armor, you just have no way to improve it after that unless you get lucky with your rolls. You can give it flight, and for its demonic gifts, you only can give it up to 75, whereas the greater demons could get 100. Going on to the heroes, again, skipping the special characters, we'll come back to that later. And there's lots of special characters. It's the normal thing that you'd expect to see. You get the Herald of every single one of the gods there. The Khorne one is 10 points more than all the other ones. But the big thing here for them is that the way that they interact with their units is a lot different. So before, if I ever put a Herald of Khorne in my unit of Bloodletters, they just got hatred. What they do here now is that each of them has a different locus, and there's 3 different ones, and what they say in the book here is that because there is lesser, greater, and exalted, if you have multiple characters in the same unit, you don't apply them all, you apply the highest. However, at the same time, even though they seem to apply that they would build up, they're actually all very different. So it's not like one is, you know, magic resistance 1 and the next one is magic resistance 2. They're fairly different all the way through, and some of them are actually pretty expensive, some of them are pretty interesting. So let's just go back to our gods here so I don't screw any of this stuff up. But the first one we're touching on is Khorne. And what theirs do, if I can quickly find it, so the lowest one there, magic resistance 2. It's alright at some points if you're worried about being blasted by magic, maybe, but for the most part, I wouldn't be looking at this. The next one here is giving them Frenzy. So, you know, your guys with Frenzy, extra attacks, it's kind of okay, but at the same time, then you can be baited. So that's not always a good thing. Finally, the highest level there is going to be the actual hatred, the one that people always took before. But the real issue here is that these are all a lot of points to get these ones for the Khorne type. I mean, all these here are what I said that there was for the big things, like where it makes terrain and stuff. That's how much you're paying to get hatred for the unit. So of course, this is actually a big deal. If you have that on your Bloodletters, hatred on them can make them insane. Beefing them with some of this awesome magic and stuff can make them insane. But it's a big investment. And remember that these guys, you can't just say like, oh, I'm just going to take armor and make them armored anymore. It's going to be random gifts. And so otherwise, these guys, for the Heralds, they just have scaly skin. You know, 6+ armor. Hope you'll be okay if somebody sends in just a little bit of stuff to kill you, right? So, pretty dangerous, and I don't know if that's actually very viable anymore. The next one is we'll touch on the Tzinch one. And these ones are pretty different. I mean, we didn't touch on what the units do yet, but basically for their guys there, for their horrors, is that they're really bringing back the whole idea of pink horrors and blue horrors. It used to be that whenever you killed one, 2 other ones pop out, they're weaker, whatever. This is, you know, a few books back. And now they're doing this, and they're called blue horrors that jump out of the pink horrors, but you don't get more models. What you do is you take tokens and you put them beside the unit. And then after combat's all done, it's kind of like those guys were attacking you. So for each of those in a 4+, you do a strength 2 hit to your opponent. Now, going on, again, you have lesser, greater, and exalted. For the lesser, instead of putting 2 counters for each one, you do D3 plus 1. So average of 3 instead of 2, but of course you got all the randomness going on. The next one there is at the start of the turn, roll a D6, and this model, all the models in that unit have a strength equal to that. So on average, 3-4 is pretty much, you know, exactly what they have, or maybe a little bit better. Of course, the dream is that you have this horde of horrors that just becomes strength 6 and decimate everything you're up against. But then again, you never know if you're going to have that strength 1. So, but I'll be touching more on this when we get to the actual unit. The final one there is that any spells they cast, because they're still wizards, is going to be a +1 strength, which is alright. But again, it's a lot of points. I mean, it's not as high as all the Corn stuff, but especially that last one is pretty high for what actually the damage output is. And remember, this is all the whole thing where if you're doing little tiny shots to try and kill off a few savages each turn, you're giving them regeneration and better regeneration and better regeneration. So Lore Tzinch, not so cool anymore. Then we get to Nurgle, and they have some cool stuff. The lesser one is poison on a 5+, which is pretty decent. The greater one is regeneration. So instead of going for your 5+ ward, you have your 4+ regeneration. And then, and of course too, synergy with the Lore of Nurgle, where you can be turning that into a 3+. And then you have your Exalted, which is really that if this model or any other model scores a 6 to hit, you do it basically another strength 4 hit as well. So it's just doing extra damage. Depending on what that is, you could actually work out almost exactly the same as having a 5+ poison, depending on how tough the unit is. But it's something there. But again, the points on these are almost pretty much the same, but they're all, you know, they're a good amount of points. I mean, for what you'd normally have an allowance for magical weapons on a hero, that's what these pretty much cost. So it's a good amount. My favorite one there, of course, is actually just the cheapest one, which is the 5+ poison. The regeneration I can obviously see be doing as well, especially if you're going to be working in that synergy. But there you have it. Now, one of my favorite ones here is with the Lore of Slaanesh. And what this one does here for the lowest one, which is very, very cheap, is just so that they pass all dangerous terrain, and they also pass all character tests except for leadership. So if you're ever worried about Purple Sun or Dwellers or whatever, no, I spent just like a pittance of points, and I'm completely immune to it. So, and it's the whole unit. So this is a great one to put your characters in, because now you don't need to worry about any of these kind of sniper spells killing them. Next one they have is the Olds Always Strikes First, which is going to be a little bit more points. And then the last one is going to be challenges that are made with this can't be refused, and you get to pick who has to take it. So very good for assassination. When you're looking at the points for this one, like I said, it started off very cheap. Those last two ones are going up. So overall, for what these locuses are, what this really means is that you can even design these to have different purposes in your army. He-Man and She-Ra? Quiet, please. So what that means is that, you know, let's look at that Slaanesh. You can have one unit that, let's say it's going to be your bunker, that's going to have your characters in it. That one you spend a very little amount of points and all of a sudden they're safe. Another unit can be your assassinating unit. So another small one just to go in there and kill something, right, with that Herald. That's the one you take that one on. Or maybe that's actually going to be in there. He's just going to charge out whenever he needs it and issue that challenge, right? You don't even need to have him in a unit. This could be just the Herald on his own. And then finally, your big Horde, which is going to have Always Strikes First. So you can really use this to, even though it's only one god, as before, they're all the same, now you can make them all different. But I got to go deal with some superheroes, so I'll be right back. Alright, we're back. He-Man and She-Ra are watching some Star Wars, so Malorian's back to doing his duty. So anyway, just quickly going back and touching about that, it makes the themes a lot more interesting. One of the things I thought was a real drawback from the last book is that everything was really the same. If you went up against a Khorne-themed army, it would be Horde of Bloodletters with one Herald, Horde of Bloodletters, one Herald, Horde of Bloodletters, one Herald, and a Bloodthirster running around, right? Not very much variation in anything. Now you're going to actually see specialized units in them that don't all really say that everything should be Horde. Some of them really say, like I was saying there with the characters, you could run them Horde and then have them all protected as well, but because they don't really have a real buff in combat, it might be a thing where they're more of a support bunker or something like that. Same thing where if you're having the bloodletters that are going to be having the frenzy, right? Sure, they might be led around the nose or something like that. You don't want to be paying tons of points for not getting much benefit from most of the models. But maybe that's going to be a flanking force or something like that, right? But there's a lot more play you can actually have with that build now. Okay, so the next thing to look at then is just all the regular units and stuff. And the first thing is, of course, your troops, your core, and this is going to be your normal demons from all the different gods. So you have your bloodletters, you have your pink horrors, you have your plague bearers, and you have your demonettes. And the first thing to notice is that they're not all the same point cost anymore. They're actually different now. Most expensive are going to be your bloodletters, then pink horrors and your plague bearers are about the same. They're a point less than the bloodletters, and then 2 points lower than even that, so 3 less than the bloodletter, is going to be your demonette. For the most part, you know, the demonettes are exactly the same as they were before. Your plague bearers, now they're going to be, remember, you have the whole -1 to hit against them, so that's pretty solid for them there. They have their normal poison attacks and everything. Your pink horrors, they're a magic unit, and what the way it works for them is that they don't go and have it so that as they have more numbers, they're a bit different type of level, right? So that if you have a massive horde, they're level 4. What they get is that as you have more ranks, you're getting another plus to cast the spell to a max of 3. So that's the way it works. That they're all just going to be lower level, which is still, I mean, it's nice to have all these things. If nothing else, these guys in your army that are going to be there to be just doing channeling and stuff like that, right? A unit of 10 of these guys, because 10 is the min size you can take, is going to be a little bit over 100 points. Kind of what you'd be taking or paying for a min size sorcerer or whatever anyway, so that's not too bad. And then it's a unit a little bit more secure, can do a lot more with it, flanking and stuff. So again, like I was saying, if you just want to be going with the whole range thing, you can take a whole bunch of units of these guys and just pew 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 from far away. But again, that's even kind of self-defeating because you're giving them regeneration and better regeneration. So one of the things that is kind of nice with these guys is the whole fact that as they kill you, it also goes back and hurts them. So it's one of those things where you can kind of like shoot at them and then use them to grind down, but they're kind of a really weird, twisted unit that doesn't really have any reliability at all, and I'm really not a big fan of the pink horrors. I mean, especially, I mean, it might be nice to have one unit of them, because then they can go and be shooting out the fast cav and stuff like that with their magic, but at the same time, for the same points, why not just get some flamers, and instead of needing to use power dice, just shoot them, right? So much easier. So, not really a big fan of them. The bloodletters, the biggest difference here is, I mean, first of all, they're the most expensive, and they went down to 1 strength. Now, keep in mind that they're going to be the normal strength when they charge, but apart from that, they aren't. So, a real hit to them, and with how expensive it is to do everything else with them, with the hatred and all that, it's pretty killer. So to me, when I'm looking at these ones, the winners are going to be the plague bearers, because that -1 hit can just help so much, and you can just grind things down. And of course, you have to remember that because of the way that the synergy works and the way that your characters have to kind of be all the same and all that, that because the lore of Nurgle is so awesome, that also helps these guys so much more as well. And then with the demonettes, you know, their lore is a little bit better. That whole thing where it protects you from the dwellers and the purple sun. Like when it comes to real competitive tournaments, this is massive to be able to do that. So between all of them, my biggest ones would be the plague bearers or the demonettes. And I mean, for the demonettes to be the cheapest, okay, sure, that's great. You know, that's pretty fantastic for me. They're also the fastest, right? So just cross the board and kill stuff. Then we get on to specials, and there's a lot of specials. So again, kind of like the Warriors of Chaos book, where there's a lot of specials to take from. First one here is you have your Blood Crushers. Now, the way it works out for them is that, remember, they have scaly skin, then now the actual Juggernaut gives you another 2, basically. So you're going to be having these guys with a 4+ armor save. not too bad, but they are a lot of points. So, I mean, sure, they're going to go in, and, I mean, you should be getting the charge with these guys, so they'll have a good amount of attacks, but even then, I'm really not a fan of them. I mean, they're not like the Skull Crushers with a 1+ armor save. So, unless I'm missing something here, I'm really not a fan of them anymore. They just don't have the resistance. They're going to be falling down to being shot, and then ground down once they get into combat. The next unit here to talk about is the Fleshhounds. They were pretty huge in 7th, really lost a lot of their steam in 8th, and now with this they kind of take on a new role. They have the Collars of Khorne, which gives them magic resistance, so that's pretty awesome. Sorry, this stuff made a nurgle or something, but the nice little thing here is that you can pay and increase their points by 10% to make them ambushers. So that could give you some neat stuff as well. I mean, it's one thing to say that I'm just going to take something fast, zip around the flank, but what if you're up against Skaven or Orcs, which are table edge to table edge? Well, these guys can just ambush, get behind, get to the bunker. But it's just like we were talking about with that little warp gate where you can bring a unit in, where it's like, okay, ambushing, come on. Then it's, you know, their turn, back to your side, then they can charge. So it's not as bad as the other one, and it's a little bit faster, but at the same time, you know, ambushers can be a little bit unreliable for when they're going to be coming in, so that can kind of really hurt them and slow it down, so it's exactly the same thing. But hey, you know, if you can get a unit of 7 Fleshhounds into a bunker, you're in a good spot. So, you know, something that made to play with. They're not that many points, and they can do an okay amount of damage, but at the same time, you know, they are only toughness 4, 2 wounds, 5+ ward, so if they start getting hit back, they're going to start losing some stuff. And I mean, they did this all the way through with these Bloodletters and stuff where they have a 6+ armor, and for the most part, that's always just going to get ignored. The next one here are the Flamers, and I think they're pretty nice. I mean, of course, they're changed from before. One of the things that really sucks is that they get that Warp Flame rule. So as you shoot something, it gets the regen. So I like the idea of taking a smaller sized unit of these guys, and then, like I was saying, if there's any of the smaller units out there, of, you know, oh, there's some Wolf Riders, there's a Fanatic, there's a Mangler-Squig. Well, poo, it's gone, right? That's kind of their job. And I mean, again, a little unit of 3, only slightly over 100 points, and is perfect for killing all these things off. They're not good in combat anymore. They're not the strength 5 and all that awesome stuff. They're only weapon skill 2, so you want to keep them out of combat. But, you know, I think they really have that support role. They're also maxed out at 6, so it's not like you can take a horde of them or anything like that anyway. They're going to have to be a small supporting unit. But you almost don't want to take too many of them. Well, it's one of those things where you want to make sure that if you're going to take 6 and use them against a unit, you're not going to waste some long distance shots. You want to make sure, get to their flank and get the most out of it. Otherwise, that regen. And again, it was a real question in the Warriors of Chaos that, okay, it's giving them regen, but all the stuff talks about fire. You know, this is all fire attacks. But nowhere does it say it's flaming. And that's not only in the Warriors of Chaos book, but it's also here where it doesn't call anything flaming attacks. I mean, it has fire in the name, but for whatever reason, they didn't make it say flaming attacks and just take that out. So, again, I'm sure this is going to come up as an errata, and then I'll put that in there, and then that will mean that this will be a lot easier. That if you are just going, say, even more, let's say you're doing kind of like a Wood Elves type list, where you have a whole bunch of the horrors, which will be all like pew 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 from far away, these guys really pumping out the shots. You don't care that you're giving them a regen because you have flaming attack. And you're not planning like, okay, first these guys are going to shoot, and then my Bloodletters are going to go fight them, and now all of a sudden that regen is going to make them better in combat. Now it doesn't matter whatsoever. Like, okay, you have a 2+ regen, I'm flaming. Pew 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 pew. Keep on killing stuff. So, but either way, it's probably easier just to keep them small and just go after the smaller units. Next page, we are on to the Screamers. Now the Screamers got kind of better because before they'd fly over a unit and they just do 1 hit. Now they do D3, so that's pretty cool. It's a little bit weaker, the attack. It's only strength 4 now, I believe, instead of strength 5, but you know, again, if you just want to fly over something and kill it, that's pretty easy to do with these guys. Now they have here too this lamprey bite, and what it does really is that whenever you're attacking something that's a monstrous creature, they have the D3 wound special rule. So, you know, if you are being pestered with some sort of monster, you could be charging these guys in, but the problem there is that their bases are kind of a bit larger. You're not going to get that many attacks. You know, they're not really that strong, so even though you're doing D3 wounds for every wound, you might not even land any, right? And then of course the monster just goes and crushes you and you lose all your unit here. So again, I think they're going to be best used just for flying over small units and taking them out. That'll be the best thing to do. And I mean, their advantage, I mean, they kind of do the same thing as the flamers. The advantage of these guys will of course be against things that are going to have a lot of minuses to shooting. So if you're trying to shoot at shades and woods or something like that, where if you're to shoot at them, you're not going to even hit them. These guys just fly over, do 3d3 hits, and really decimate the unit. Nurglings are kind of like before. They're 2 to 12 for size. They scout, so really they're going to be your guys that you're just scouting, going after war machines. But again, you could always be taking an okay unit of these guys, go after the bunker. So there's an option there too. Of course, it all just comes down to if your opponent even gives you a spot to scout. Naturally, they're better at smaller games where your opponent just can't cover everything. Whereas in larger games, there's going to be nowhere to scout. They're going to have to be in the front, and you're not going to be getting that many things from their points. Next thing here is the Beast of Nurgle, and you can take them as a 1. So out of all the other stuff there, they're the only thing now you can take them as a unit of 1. The Fiends of Slaanesh, you have to take at least 3 now. So if you're going to have one of these things here, they're going to be kind of like your one-off, kind of like how Orc players run the single troll. It's going to have to be with this guy. However, you just have one big downfall, which is Attention Seeker, which is what that does is that it can actually accept and refuse challenges. And what that means then is that if you go to charge these guys in to go kill a character, well, they issue a challenge, he has to fight the champ, he just dies and pops from combat res. Otherwise though, you know, they do have a good toughness. You are -1 to hit them. If you are going with Nurgle, you have all the synergy there with being able to increase their regeneration, and also with their toughness and stuff. They have D6 + 1 attacks each. This is a unit where I could see actually going with a fairly large unit and just like smashing things. So even though it says 1+, I mean, I could see units of them out there of 6, 8, whatever. They are kind of more points, so I mean, I don't think I'm going to be seeing a horde of them or anything like that, you know, because they're along the range of Treekin. But, you know, I see units of 10 Treekin in some of my games, and if you were to see 10 of these guys, that would definitely hurt, and it would kick your butt. So, that's there. Then you have your Seekers. So, they're kind of like before, they're your really fast guys, they're the fast cav. If you want to really zip around a flank and get to some war machines or something, you could do that. Again, because of the point cost, it's probably going to be best if you're doing with the Herald, so you actually make them fairly solid, and they're going to be going after the bunker or something like that. And that's where you could really bring in that kind of assassination Herald, where you put that guy in this, where he has the ability to force the challenge and then just zip him around. These guys are going to make sure that he actually gets there, charge in, does a challenge. You have to take it with, let's say, the Greyseer, and then he kills a Greyseer, and hooray for Daemons. So that's where you could see these guys being used. You got your Fiends. They're 5 points more than the Beast of Nurgle. You have to take at least 3 now, and they're really just kind of like before. Movement 10, really fast. They're Strength 4, Toughness 4, and you know, they're just kind of like your really fast kind of monstrous infantry, except that they're beasts. So are the Nurgles as well, by the way. Next thing here is we get on to your chariots, and I mean, you have this secret chariot of Slaanesh, which is a new model. It looks kind of different and stuff, but looking at this here, it is just such a letdown. The same cost you're paying for a Warriors of Chaos chariot is what you're paying here. However, it's only toughness 4. It only has a 6+ armor save. Now remember, it's going to have a 5+ ward. Okay, fair enough. But still, you only get 4 wounds and that 6+ armor and stuff. It's just going to die. You know, it's not going to do too much. Sure, it's really fast. It's a movement 10 chariot. That's kind of cool. But you know what? A wolf chariot is movement 9, and it's only 50 points, right? It's less than half the cost. So, really, I mean, unless you're going for the theme army and you kind of want to like show off some things, I really am not a fan of this whatsoever. I'd rather go just putting those points into, you know, some other monsters or whatever, or the monstrous beast, something like that. Really not a fan here. Then you have your Furies. Now, these guys here, you can actually put whatever mark you want on them. So whereas before, the Furies, you know, in some different races, they have really crappy leadership. Well, their leadership too. At least if you put the mark on them, then they can get the general leadership. But for the most part, you're going to be taking these guys just to throw out, right? This will be a throwaway unit. Maybe they're going to zip out there and try and tie up a trebuchet or something like that. But yeah, for the most part, they're just going to be your throwaway guys. They're just going to fly out there, die, but do their job while dying. Alright, now we're into rares, and this is where we get to some of the crazy stuff. The first thing is the Cannon of Khorne. Now, this one people have been complaining about a lot. On Warseer, I really tried defending it, saying like, well, there's these special rules, we don't know what they do, just wait, I bet you it's not as crazy as it sounds. And it's, I gotta say, I was wrong. This thing is pretty damn solid. So what this is a chariot that is toughness 5, 3+ armor. It's a little bit more expensive than the Gore Beast chariot for Warriors of Chaos. So, but the thing here too is that it comes with a cannon. And this thing here too can move and shoot. So getting a cannon into Demons really changes the game, because they really didn't have much of a shooting phase before. I mean, sure, they had just got the Soul Grinder, but now this is something that's much cheaper, and cannons for them is amazing, because it's not only something where you're using it to take out, you know, monsters, whatever, that'd be normal for a cannon, but it's almost just like for what the Iron Blaster does for the ogres, where just like how when the biggest thing that hurts ogres is war machines. So if you have an Iron Blaster, use the Iron Blaster to take out the war machines, then those war machines aren't taking out your ogres. And it's the same thing here. Use your Skull Cannon of Khorne to take out their war machines, and then their war machines aren't taking out your greater demon. So that's definitely something to look at. And then of course, it has move and shoot, and it's also movement 7. So it can keep up with your line pretty good. And then after it gets a few of those pop shots off, charge into combat. So it does have a few other rules here too. It has Gore Feast and it has Demonic Engine. And I thought maybe it might make it forced to charge or something like that, but no, it has stuff where if it does impact hits, it can heal itself, so it's not like how I thought. You can kind of see that probably the way it's probably going to be going in happening during the battle is that you're going to have your one turn, you move out, you shoot, and then you're going to be charging with the line, right? So really, you're paying these points above a normal chariot to get one cannon shot. But then again, you can do a lot of damage with a single cannonball shot, and if you ever misfire, it's only doing 1 wound to it. It's not like a chance it can explode, so it's pretty damn solid. And of course, it gives you the option now just to stay back and be defensive. Remember, we talked about there's that one item that goes and makes even terrain for you. You can play defensively. That's what you'd be taking, is these things back there too, and just blasting these cannons at them to take out anything that's really serious to you. So definitely a very strong unit. While we're talking about that, we can talk about its counterpart, which is a mount for the characters of Khorne, the Heralds, and really it's stupid. I would not take this. Really, think of it like the altar from Empire, where, you know, it has like a bubble effect. Well, whatever Locus you give your Herald, it is a bubble effect. So if you had multiple units of Heralds of Khorne, Bloodletters, instead of having a Herald in each of those, you could just take this one and do bubble effects. but really it's just going to be affecting 2 units, so you could have just taken a Herald anyway, and all you're asking for is to eat a cannon and lose both the Herald and the mount. So really not a fan of it, whereas for the Skull Cannon, I am a big fan of it. Now we're on to the Burning Chariot of Tzeentch, and there's people out there that looked at this model and said it's garbage. You know, fire all over the place, looks really weird. Sometimes you have to say, who cares what it looks like? This is pretty damn good. It has 2 ways it can shoot. It has one where it's kind of like a multiple shots. It has another where it shoots like a flamethrower. Now, that's pretty awesome because this thing can fly. So if you take this thing, fly it to the side of a unit, and you know, shoot it down the side, you can devastate the thing. Now, the only thing that kind of holds this back and make it so it's not insane is the fact that it's actually a random strength. So it's not just a super massive hit and you know, everything's a strength 6. It is going to be a strength of D6, but even that being said, you know, it's that goes down a line. Out of your horde of 40, it could kill half the unit, right? That's a very easy and real possibility. So very dangerous thing to have. Of course, whenever you shoot those things there, you might be causing panic tests. It has an upgrade so that units within 6 are -1 leadership, so you can kind of play a leadership game. You can always take the mask too, and you know, lower it by a couple. And of course, with the lores as well, it's not like somebody with a lore of Nurgle has to take Nurgle. You can also take the lore of Death. You can still be getting Shadow, so you could be still playing a leadership game as well here, and it's fairly dangerous. It is slow to fire though, so you do have to kind of play with it and get your positioning right, but still, it's pretty damn good. And at the end of the day, it's also a chariot, so it can also charge in and help you out. And the difference here between this and the Slaanesh one is because it flies. Sure, the Slaanesh one is fast and maybe can get to a flank so that you're not getting that many return attacks. Well, again, could be board edge to board edge, and this thing just flies over and can come in from behind or whatever. So pretty nice chariot, and something you should definitely think about if you go up against a lot of hordes. The next one here is the Soul Grinder. Big huge monster, which is basically just taken for 40k. It's kind of like a monster and a war machine at the same time. Starts off as shooting out the flame. You can make it a cannon, you can make it a bolt thrower, you can make it a stone thrower. But the big thing here is that it's a lot of points. I mean, if I'm going to go and take this and take, well, whatever small upgrade, and one of the nice things here is that you can also give it the Marks of Khorne. So probably what you're going to be going with that is if you're going to stay back and shoot, you might go with making him a Demon of Tzeentch, so you have a better ward in case you're being hit by cannons or something. And if you're going to be fighting as well, then you can go ahead and make this Mark of Nurgle, and you'll make him a little bit more survivable. But basically, if you give him any upgrade, so let's say you gave him a cannon, you could just take in 2 of the skull cannons. Now, of course, I mean, there's some advantages monsters have over skull cannons, like chariots and all that stuff, but still, in terms of the shooting ability, that's not what you're really getting here. So for the most part, what I see you'd be taking him for, if you're going to be investing all these points, is putting him on a flank, moving up, again, doing the flame to do lots of damage, and then throwing him into combat and killing stuff and thunder stomping and all that fun stuff. So that's what he does. He is a lot of points. He has a fairly good toughness 7, so that's going to help him keep alive, but again, cannons will be on a 2+ anyway. Next we're on to the Exalted Secret Chariot. So sounds pretty fancy and all that stuff. The big thing here is that instead of getting D6 plus 1 impact hits, it gets 2d6 plus 1 impact hits. It has way more wounds. I believe it's double the wounds than the regular chariot, so that's pretty awesome. But it's also double the points. So when it comes to chariots, it's kind of the same thing with orcs and goblins. You can take a unit of 3 wolf chariots, but it's just probably better to take 3 individual chariots, because there's always that worry that there could be a cannon shot that could really devastate them. Let's say you got a flank shot in that type of situation, or you know, if it actually gets charged, then all those impact hits are lost. If you had in separate units, only one would be lost, other ones can countercharge. So to me, if I had to take one exalted or two of the regular ones, I would take two of the regular ones. However, in the end, like I already said, it only has a 6+ armor and it's crappy anyway, and for paying more points than a Nurgle Giant to get this thing, yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, if you're in a type of meta which has no shooting and no good ways of countering and redirecting, sure, you know, like if all you play is High Elves, sure, take this thing. Smash them, kill them. But otherwise, not really a fan, and just too much of a liability. Then you get your Health Flare of Slaanesh, and this is kind of like the real kind of like big crazy killy thing. Its big different special rule from the other one is just the Soul Scent, and really all that means is that every single time you do an impact hit and you kill something, the little Aloris or whatever her name is on top gets another attack. So it's basically the regular crappy chariot with a few more attacks. It's a few more points. It was crappy to begin with. It's still crappy, don't take it. So there you go, that. Then we get to the new fancy unit. We got our Plague Drones and Nurgle. So before this, the flying monstrous infantry type stuff was only really the Pegasus Knights. Now we have these guys too. However, they don't actually fly. They hover, which is a lot slower. So they're not going to be zipping around the whole battlefield and all this, but you know, there's still of course times where fly will be nice. You can just fly over a river or whatever the case is, over a building. But you know, they're fairly solid. You know, at toughness 5, 3 wounds apiece, lots of attacks, strength 5 for the fly, 4 on the guys on top. You know, they'll get in there and they can grind down. And again, Nurgle. Nurgle is just awesome now with the way that you actually are able to buff your guys. You know, they're toughness 5 now, but you can always be raising that even higher. And I mean, these guys get in there and grind things down. So as opposed to if you're looking at the Skull Crushers, where they have lots of attacks and almost no defense, these guys do almost just as well offensively, and they're a lot more tougher. Well, okay, so the other guys are only, just to do a comparison here, they're toughness 4, these guys are toughness 5. These guys won't have much of an armor, whereas these guys at least have a 4+, but I mean that's probably going to be ignored anyway. And again, you have to look at the way that you're going to be using it with the lores you're going to be taking. And of course there's no lore of Khorne, but man, just Nurgle's just so awesome. It does have some upgrades. If you ever see that little tube thing that can come out of the mouth, it's actually kind of a shot that is strength 4 and is D4 wounds, or D3 rather. And I mean, maybe if you're flying around some sort of, you know, other weak monstrous infantry like ogres, you want to shoot at them if you didn't want to dedicate to combat, because you know, maybe it's an Iron Gut star, right? And you'd rather just like hover around and pew 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 pew, you know, like. But the thing is that it's a good amount of points for that upgrade. You can also give poison attacks. You'd also give something that's kind of better than a poison attack, where if it hits, it automatically wounds. But overall, yeah, it's just not worth to do any of these upgrades. I would just leave them as it is and just go in there and just grind things down. And that's really the whole book. So overall, talking about some of the winners and losers, I really think you're going to see a lot of Nurgle out there. Again, it's just because the lore of Nurgle is just so strong. Remember, you're going to have Death in there as well. However, the other one I see really being in there is going to be the Slaanesh. The ability, like I keep on pushing to say that I can't be killed by those mega spells, right? I'm not going to die because I have to take a toughness test. It's impossible. I automatically pass it. So that's amazingly good. They're very fast. I don't know if you're going to be seeing the greater demons, to be fair. If you do, it is going to be the way that I say, where they're going to be taking 4 of the lesser so that they can just get all those different stuff, get really killy. But the problem is that then they don't have a very good defense. You know, you're not going to get that high armor anymore. They don't have the ways to heal themselves like the Keeper of Secrets did anymore. However, on the flip side, you might be pairing that with these new skull cannons to take out the enemy cannons and go from there. But in the most part here, I think it's switching away from greater demons and going to more of these monstrous things. So going to, you know, maybe the skull crushers, or well, blood crushers, or these drones of Nurgle, and just going in there and crushing things. But again, it's going to be an army, whereas before, if you faced demons, very boring. Like I said, horde, big greater demon. You might have a few fiends thrown in there for fun or something like that, but for the most part, very static. And if you see different demon armies, the only question is what god they're going to go with. Now, it's almost like the Warriors of Chaos, where going into the game, if you're being told you're up against demons, it could be anything. It could be any sort of different mixes, you know? Even for the troops, you're not going to see a horde for everything. It's now a lot more viable. It'd be taking these different sizes for different utilities and all this. So, a very interesting book. I really like what they did with it. It's... The only negative, again, is going to be the fact that it is so random, and I know a lot of people are really going to hate that about that magic phase, where you have to go that and see what type of craziness is happening. It also forces you to have some extra models, so if you're ever going into a game, it's almost, I mean, vampire accounts are always used to this, bringing extra models with them, but now, just how like in the Warriors of Chaos book, you can't just go into a game with your army. You need to bring in that demon prince. You need to bring in that spawn in case you make them as well. And the same thing is here. You need to be bringing in more guys in case you make a unit. If you ever roll that 6, which I said because you're doing this 12 times, is actually not that unlikely. I mean, over 3 games it's probably going to happen. You need to have that extra unit to put them on the table. And at the same time, because you get to choose, you might want to have several stuff with you, right? Maybe you're going to have a unit of Nurglings if you... Plague Bearers if you want them, some Demonettes if you want them, maybe some Horrors if your magic is going low. And so that means that you have to have all these extra models with you. And then again, the whole thing I said, where you're slowing down the game a little bit, there's that back and forth. But overall, that could be countered by the fact that now you have a more diverse army. But then again, counter that again for a person that's going into a tournament to win. The lack of a Dispel Scroll is a very big difference here. The lack of being able to take a killer greater demon that's just going to kill whatever you want and be amazing. Like the whole Keeper of Secrets, I heal myself, throw myself into a combat and just stomp and kill things while I cast magic. You know, you just can't do that anymore. But yeah, a very different army book, and one I can't wait to see what people bring to tournaments with. So there you have it. If you have any comments or things you disagree with or things you want me to touch on more, just let me know. And then the next video will be me talking about their special characters, and there's a lot of them. So see you then. Bye.